They exiled humanity, fearing our aggression, but in the silence of exile, we became something greater. We built alliances from ruins, turned rejection into unity, and returned not with vengeance, but with vision. Now, the galaxy looks to us, not as conquerors, but as the ones who learned to rise beyond the stars. Admiral Kim stood motionless at the rear of the Galactic Council chamber, her uniform a stark contrast to the flowing diplomatic robes of Earth's envoys. The ceiling stretched impossibly high above her, arched in living crystal that pulsed with subtle color shifts, not for aesthetics, but as a neural interface between the chamber and the sentient AI that recorded every syllable spoken within. The walls glowed softly with light-embedded metal, shifting patterns cascading down their surface in designs no human hand could replicate. At the heart of the arena, Earth's delegation stood surrounded by thousands of alien observers, representatives from civilizations that spanned the spiral arms. Foreign Secretary Jun addressed the primary counselors, his voice steady but strained. Esteemed members of the Council, humanity has come far. We have ended our internecine wars, stabilized our planetary ecosystem, and united in a way few species have. We seek peaceful integration into the galactic community. The 6 primary counselors sat on elevated thrones carved from planetary cores, each representing one of the founding species of the Galactic Union. They were diverse beyond human comprehension: the Krell, insectoid with translucent carapaces; the gaseous Mithrin contained in levitating crystalline spheres; the Daxian, broad-shouldered quadrupeds with 4 upper limbs and eyes like molten gold. Others defied description altogether. But Admiral Kim recognized their expressions. They weren't curious. They were calculating. The Daxian counselor raised 2 of his forelimbs, activating his translator. The response came in a perfect monotone, robbed of the natural clicks and chimes of his native language. "We have reviewed Earth's historical records," he said flatly. "No species in recorded Union history has spent as much of its developmental period in warfare as yours. Your economic models were born from conquest. Your technological surges occurred during global conflicts. Even your entertainment glorifies violence." June tried to interrupt, but the Krell counselor silenced him with a twitch of her antennae that triggered her speaker. "Risk assessments are conclusive. Humanity evolved through competitive aggression, not cooperative symbiosis. That evolutionary route renders you inherently unstable." Admiral Kim clenched her jaw. They weren't just skeptical, they had already decided. For 6 days, Earth's delegates had submitted data, answered questions, endured psychological analysis. On day 1, they were guests. By day 3, they were suspects. Now, they were defendants. Earth Science Minister, Dr. Han, stepped forward. "Our competitive nature has led to advances that may benefit all. Medicine, engineering, adaptive systems. Such technologies can be developed by cooperative species," the Mithrin counselor interrupted, its crystal housing flickering with disdain. "Without the accompanying danger." Admiral Kim felt Lieutenant Choi lean toward her slightly. "They're afraid of us," he whispered. "Yes," she replied softly. "And fear turns allies into enemies." The primary counselors spoke on encrypted frequencies for several minutes while Earth's delegation stood exposed under the chamber's light. Around them, whispers passed through the tiers. Curious stares, pitiful glances. Humanity's reputation had reached the stars before they had. At last, the central counselor, a being made of flowing metal and reflected starlight, delivered the verdict. "Earth is hereby classified as a Category 3 civilization, technologically advanced, but culturally unsuitable for integration. You will be permitted to develop only within the bounds of your solar system. A containment barrier will be established beyond the orbit of your outermost planet. Any attempt to breach it will be treated as an act of aggression." Foreign Secretary Jun visibly sagged, gripping the podium. "How long?" he asked, voice low. The metallic being's response was instant. "Until humanity undergoes a measurable evolutionary shift in behavioral aggression. Based on comparable case models, approximately 50,000 years." Gasps rippled through the delegation. 50,000. Longer than recorded human history. A quiet death sentence for every dream of reaching the stars. Dr. Han stepped forward again. "We request the right to present additional data. Alternative evaluations." "The Council's decision is final," the Krell snapped. "You will be escorted to your vessel. A limited package of support technology will be provided to sustain Earth's ecological balance. No faster-than-light drives. No interstellar communications. No unrestricted science sharing." The chamber lights dimmed. The session was over. Admiral Kim followed as armored drones encircled the Earth delegation, guiding them through the Council spire's towering corridors. They passed defenses whose very shape defied physics, ships docked at invisible moorings, beings moving in complete silence. The grandeur wasn't lost on her, but neither was the arrogance. As they neared their ship, Lieutenant Choi spoke again. "They should have accepted us. Or ended us." Kim's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. You don't cage a predator. Not unless you're ready for it to grow fangs." Aboard the ship, the diplomats were broken. Earth's political prestige shattered. June stared blankly at the bulkhead. Dr. Han sat in silence. No one looked Kim in the eye. But she had already scheduled a meeting privately. No recording devices. No diplomatic presence. Just military and science personnel. When they were gathered in the small, shielded conference room, she stood before them with arms behind her back. The council believes they've clipped our wings, she began. But they've made a mistake. A species like ours cannot be contained. Not truly. Not when we know the stars are reachable. Dr. Han shifted. They're centuries ahead of us. For now, Kim agreed. But we've seen their designs. Their ships. Their power sources. Their infrastructure. We've studied it. We know it exists, and that means it can be replicated. Reverse engineered. Reinvented. Lieutenant Choi frowned. They'll be watching us. Kim smiled slightly. They'll watch for military moves. For direct violations. They won't expect patience. Stealth. Adaptation. Dr. Han leaned forward, catching her meaning. You're suggesting research in secret. Underground. More than that, she said. A unification of all Earth's resources. Every nation. Every mind. We make their exile the spark of something greater. Her voice grew stronger. They see aggression as a flaw. But it's a tool. One we've tempered with understanding. With caution. With purpose. They judge us on our past. Let's build a future that forces them to reevaluate. On the return journey to Earth, while diplomats prepared their bleak reports, Kim issued the orders. Secure research bunkers were commissioned beneath deserts and mountains. Military satellites were repurposed. A planetary council formed, not just to govern, but to survive. Project Prometheus was born, a multi-generational effort to unlock faster-than-light travel from the fragments stolen through observation. And from the silence of space, Earth stared upward, no longer as a child seeking permission, but as a force denied entry. Now determined to return. The Nevada sky was cold and dry above the entrance to Facility 12, but deep beneath the desert, the air was electric with anticipation. Dr. Park stood alone in the core chamber of the Project Prometheus research complex, surrounded by layers of shielding and sensor-nullifying architecture. Above him, in the center of a reinforced magnetic cradle, a glowing toroidal construct spun silently, not metal, not crystal, but a composite of alien alloys reverse-engineered from fragments recovered during Earth's brief exposure to Galactic Council systems. Status, he asked, without turning. Field integrity at 89% and climbing, came the voice of his assistant. Power modulation holding stable. Gravimetric distortion approaching threshold. 20 years. That's how long it had taken. From nothing but glances, memory, and a few slivers of salvage material from the Council's technology, humanity had gone from theoretical models to this, the world's first functional hyperspace distortion array. Run it, Park said. The containment ring flared with bluish-white light, rippling with spatial energy that bent the visible spectrum around it. Gravity twitched. Light slowed. Inside the core, space itself folded, the torus twisting impossibly before snapping back into perfect symmetry. Stable, his assistant called out. Field lock achieved. Record everything, Park ordered. All telemetry. Prepare the test chamber. We go live tomorrow. Across the planet, encrypted systems lit up. Admiral Kim, now commander of Earth's Unified Defense Network, received the alert beneath the Pacific Ocean. She said nothing at first, only stared at the data scrolling across her screen. Then, quietly, she spoke 2 words. Phase 2. The next day, the device activated again, this time for real. A probe, no larger than a suitcase, hovered before the toroidal gate. Energy levels spiked. Within seconds, the probe was gone and vanished through folded space-time. Moments later, a signal returned. Confirmed, the comms officer shouted. It's past Neptune. Signal lock clean. Cheers erupted in the command chamber. Even Park, normally the most reserved of the scientists, allowed himself a slow smile. Kim's image appeared on the main screen, her expression unreadable, but her voice firm. How long before it's scalable for a full-size vessel? A prototype in 6 months, Park said. Fleet ready? 1 year, maybe less. Then accelerate everything. This changes everything. It did. Within 18 months, Earth had launched its first hyperspace-capable ship, the GSV Prometheus. Built under the lunar crust, it carried 20 crew members and slipped past the Council's quarantine perimeter using a blend of stealth, decoys, and its prototype drive. Its mission: establish the first hidden colony beyond Sol. Admiral Kim herself led the mission, defying her age, and the protest of political advisors. She piloted the Prometheus to a barren system 12 light-years from Earth, an empty stretch of rock and radiation the Council had long deemed irrelevant. Perfect. Within a year, the first resource processing station was operational, hidden deep in an asteroid belt. Over the next 5 years, 6 more colonies were established, each self-sustaining, each shielded by advanced stealth fields. Earth's industrial base tripled. Shipyards were carved into asteroids. Relay stations built into frozen moons. Raw materials surged back to Earth via untraceable cargo lanes. And above it all, Admiral Kim watched. Relentless, strategic, ruthlessly efficient. Let them believe we've surrendered, she told her command staff. The longer they ignore us, the stronger we become. The Council's monitors, still watching Seoul from afar, saw only a unified Earth, peaceful, enclosed, focused on sustainability. They noticed no violation, no breach, no reason to suspect what was building just beyond their sensors' reach. But Project Prometheus had become Operation Exodus. And it was working. Then came the next breakthrough. 10 years after the hyperspace gate had first stabilized, Dr. Park unveiled the second-generation drive, more efficient, smaller, capable of longer, silent jumps. It was fitted onto a new class of ship, the Shadowfall-class cruiser, Earth's first real warships. Sleek, angular, absorbing radar and gravimetric scans alike, they moved like predators through dark water. Their hulls bore no flags. Their records were encrypted, and their missions were never acknowledged. The Council had wanted peace. Humanity had given them silence instead, and in that silence, they thrived. Phase 3 began in a chamber deep beneath the Himalayas, where the unified Earth Parliament met. Now composed of technocrats, veterans, scientists, and architects of exile, it governed in secrecy, its decisions projected through layers of proxies to maintain the illusion of compliance. Admiral Kim stood before the assembly, the holoscreen behind her showing live telemetry from 12 human colonies across 20 light-years. We have built the foundation, she said. Now we reach out. She outlined a new objective, make contact with other species rejected by the Council. Civilizations labeled unstable or inferior. Small worlds exploited for resources. Nomadic peoples denied membership. We don't need the Council's permission, she said. We need only time. The room fell silent. Then came unanimous approval. Within a year, contact had been made with 3 such civilizations carefully, cautiously. Offers of trade, of technology exchange, of mutual protection. Most were stunned. None refused. Earth, once exiled, was building something new, not a rebellion, but an alternative. A network. A confederation of outcasts, outliers, and forgotten worlds. The Council had dismissed them all, but they remembered. As Earth's influence grew, Admiral Kim became less a figurehead and more a myth. Soldiers who had never met her spoke of her as if she still commanded every ship personally. Colonists quoted her old speeches like scripture. Engineers worked triple shifts because Kim wouldn't accept a delay. And in truth, she never stopped. Now nearing 80, her health maintained by the finest medical advances Earth could devise, she oversaw every operation, every launch, every new alliance. They thought we'd die in our cage, she once told Dr. Park. Instead, we became something else. He had smiled, but hesitated. Sometimes I wonder, are we proving them right? Kim had looked at him sharply. Containment is death, she replied. We adapted. We survived. That's not aggression. That's evolution. From the observation deck of Lunar Station 1, she watched the Shadowfall rise from its cradle, its hull absorbing the stars. The Council has no idea what's coming, she whispered. And she was right. 50 years had passed since the Council's decree of exile. Humanity had long since stopped watching the barrier beyond Neptune. Instead, their attention turned outward, not to challenge the wall, but to dig under it, to find every blind spot, every fracture. The Defiant, one of Earth's most advanced exploration cruisers, hovered in high orbit above an unassuming planet with soft blue oceans and vast green continents, the homeworld of the Currents. Captain Lee stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The data was unambiguous, a pre-industrial civilization, still discovering electricity, clustered in densely populated regions. Their language had yet to go global. Their skies held only weather, no machines. And yet, a threat had already arrived. Magnify Sector 4, she said. The image zoomed in on a massive object breaching the upper atmosphere, a ship 3 times the size of the Defiant, descending like a leviathan cloaked in flame. The design was unmistakable, Taylor Consortium. Resource extractor confirmed, her science officer reported. Atmospheric processors deploying. No signs they detected us yet. Captain Lee's jaw tightened. Projected impact on planetary biosphere? Catastrophic. Temperature shift, oxygen degradation, carbon saturation within 2 local months. 93% fatality rate among surface life forms. Extinction level. Silence gripped the bridge. The Currens would die. Their cities would crumble before they ever learned what stars were. And the Taylor wouldn't care. To them, it was just another rock with valuable isotopes and weak resistance. Orders were clear. Do not engage. Stay hidden. Humanity's survival depended on secrecy. But that was before this. Lee turned. Signal the Swift and the Horizon. Defensive posture. Weapons cold. No targeting locks. Her first officer stared. You're not going to bring us out of stealth. Move to intercept trajectory. Place us between the extractor and the planet. Gasps echoed across the command deck. Open a channel, Lee said. The Taylor ship was slow to respond. When it did, the alien on-screen had the flat expression of an apex predator interrupted mid-feast. Its compound eyes narrowed. You are unidentified. Withdraw. This planet is under authorized extraction rights, per Council designation. Interference will be treated as hostile action. Lee didn't flinch. This planet is inhabited by a sentient developing species. You are in violation of multiple statutes of non-interference. You have no standing, the Taylor hissed. Your species is under quarantine. Lee's voice was calm. That quarantine ended the day you chose extermination over dialogue. The extractor powered up its weapons. Lee didn't wait. Shields up. Target their propulsion and forward batteries. Disable only. The Defiant moved like a dancer between falling towers. 3 Earth ships, sleek and silent, weaved through Taylor fire, their systems harmonized through quantum sync. Energy pulses leapt from the horizon, slicing through the extractor's targeting array. The Swift flanked, crippling maneuvering thrusters. The Defiant struck the main engine core with precision, not to destroy, but to stop. In minutes, the extractor was dead in space. 5 more Taylor support ships arrived from the far side of the moon, their own weapons charging. Lee raised her hand. Minimal casualties. Focus fire. Defensive suppression only. The next exchange was surgical. No human ship was even scratched. Within 15 minutes, the entire Taylor fleet was adrift. The Defiant opened a final channel. Transmit this message to your council superiors. The Karen system is now under human protection, as are 6 other systems we have identified. Any further interference will be met with proportional response. The Taylor commander stared, stunned. What are you? Lee let the silence stretch, then answered. We are what your council forced us to become. The Taylor ships limped away, trailing energy leaks and calm silence. Humanity had just shown its hand, not entirely, but enough. The question was no longer if the council would find out. It was how they would respond. Back in the Sol system, the unified parliament convened. No longer hidden, the chamber beneath the Himalayas now hosted not just human leaders but representatives from 23 non-council species, outcasts, misfits, victims of the same condescension Earth once endured. Admiral Kim, now Chancellor Kim, entered slowly. Age had carved lines into her face, but her spine remained straight, her voice steel. They know, she said simply. The council is aware. Delegates murmured, some nervous, others defiant. Let them come, said the crystalline NAR ambassador. They denied our sovereignty for 3 generations. Now they will learn we do not beg. We are no longer in the shadows, Kim continued. We've built a new structure, not an empire, but a confederation, an alliance of equals. No single race at the top. No ancient protocols. Only the future. The vote was unanimous, revealed the Shadow Confederation. In 3 weeks, the Council's diplomatic ship entered the solar system expecting to find one world, isolated and aging. They found Mars, green and thriving. They found orbital cities around Jupiter. They found Callisto Station, a megastructure that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. And they found Earth, not alone, but surrounded by dozens of ships in joint formation, their designs as diverse as the beings who flew them. The Council delegation was received by Kim herself. Calm. Formal. Not pleading, commanding. You quarantined a species born of fire and made of iron, she said. You expected us to wither. Instead, we became something new. The Council accused her of violation. She showed them the Alliance's charter. They accused her of aggression. She pointed to the peaceful Karen, alive and free because of human intervention. You judged us unfit, she said. Now you see what we built when freed from your judgment. And then she offered them peace. Trade. Coexistence. A hand extended, not in surrender, but in challenge. Join us, she said, or watch your power dwindle. They left shaken. The Shadow Confederation had revealed itself. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council had not faced true crisis in over 20,000 years. Its chambers, once known for their serene order and impeccable decorum, now echoed with shouted accusations and the crackling tension of planetary-scale panic. For 3 days, representatives from over 300 species argued without resolution. The core of the storm was not a war, not a rebellion, not even a disaster. It was a single word. Humans. The Council had believed them contained, a volatile species sealed behind a technologically reinforced wall, left to simmer in isolation. Instead, they had returned not with fleets of conquest, but with alliances, infrastructure, and influence that stretched across half the neglected sectors of the mid-spiral arm. This is impossible, the Daxian councillor roared, slamming 4 fists on the platform. Their quarantine was absolute. And yet, said the Exalter representative, still visibly shaken from their encounter with the Defiant, they are out there. Dozens of ships. Coordinated strikes. Their vessels are invisible to our long-range detection. Their drives don't register. And their tactics, the alien hesitated, mandibles twitching, surgical. Across the chamber, a dozen species that once mocked the idea of human relevance now exchanged anxious glances. In a shadowed alcove high above the central floor, a figure in a deep hood recorded everything. The Ravi were masters of information, smugglers, analysts, and merchants of secrets. This observer had one task: listen, synthesize, and sell the truth to the highest bidder. 6 days later, that same agent stood in a darkened vault on the edge of Confederation space, delivering a complete intelligence package to a tall woman whose name still whispered through war rooms and diplomatic archives. Admiral Kim. Now over a century old, her bones reinforced by nanomedicine, her mind sharp as ever, Kim read through the Council's reaction transcript in silence. When she finally spoke, it was with measured satisfaction. "They're afraid," she said. "Good. Fear makes them predictable. They're preparing search fleets," the Ravi informed. "Sweep missions through the peripheries. They'll look for your colonies. They won't find them. Their technology is still superior." Kim nodded. "Which is why we don't fight them head-on. Not yet." She transferred the agreed-upon payment with a flick of her fingers, and the agent vanished. Her aide, a young strategist from Titan Base, stepped forward. "Should we increase defensive deployment?" "No," Kim said. "What we need now is visibility." The parliament convened within days. The chamber beneath the Himalayas had expanded, now hosting not only Earth's leaders, but delegates from 23 allied species. What began as desperation had become solidarity. What started in exile had grown into something far more potent: conviction. Admiral Kim took the central platform once more, her voice amplified not by tech but by sheer presence. "For 50 years, we built in the shadows. But we did not build alone." She gestured, and holoscreens activated around the room, images of thriving colonies, joint research hubs, mixed species academies, and fleets with hulls bearing emblems not of nations, but of unity. "The Council will send envoys. They will demand submission. I propose we show them what their exile has created." Applause thundered from every species present. And so, 3 weeks later, a diplomatic vessel from the Council arrived at the edge of the Sol system, prepared to land on a planet they believed still primitive and isolated. Instead, they were rerouted, not to Earth, but to Callisto Station. They docked in silence, stepping out into a facility larger than anything their architecture had ever produced. Orbiting Jupiter, Callisto Station served as the Confederation's administrative hub, naval command, and joint academy. A city in space. They were greeted by Chancellor Kim and 5 representatives, each from a species previously discarded or rejected by the Council. The Mithran delegate pulsed with agitation in its crystal shell. "This violates galactic law," it said. "Earth was judged unfit. You were forbidden this level of development." "Then perhaps you should have watched us more closely," Kim replied. "We will not tolerate a second union rising in parallel to the Council." "You don't have a choice," Kim answered coolly. They debated for hours. The Council claimed ancient authority. Kim showed them statistics, trade flows, stabilized zones, conflict reductions, and Confederation-protected systems. The Council invoked law. Kim countered with proof of lives saved, of civilizations preserved. "You feared our aggression," she said. "But it wasn't aggression. It was survival. And now, we offer peace, not submission." They left without agreeing to anything. But they left. And that alone was victory. A decade passed. Earth's Confederation now included 50 member species and over 200 worlds. It maintained patrol fleets, medical aid corridors, trade routes, all of it coordinated from Callisto and other orbital stations. The Council had grudgingly accepted diplomatic exchanges. Treaties followed. Trade resumed. And then came the centennial. 100 years since the exile. Callisto Station glowed like a silver lotus in the void, its petals stretched over 30 kilometers, home to embassies, universities, and observation decks that looked down on a Sol system transformed. Chancellor Sun, granddaughter of Admiral Kim, now held leadership. As ships arrived through shimmering hyperspace corridors, each bearing different languages, forms, banners, there was one constant. They had come to acknowledge a power that could no longer be ignored. And among them, Council ships. Clean, pristine, and undeniably humbled. "They came," said Vice Chancellor Trell, whose crystalline form shimmered with soft inner light. Sun adjusted her formal navy blue coat, stitched with silver trim, a subtle echo of Kim's uniform. They had no choice. The ceremony was held in a vast chamber, designed to reflect the original Council Hall, the place where humanity had once been cast out. It was a deliberate mirror. Sun took the stage. 100 years ago, they told us we were unworthy," she began. "Too aggressive. Too divided. Too dangerous." Her voice rang clear. "And in their fear, they gifted us something more powerful than membership. They gave us purpose. They forced us to define ourselves not through acceptance, but through resilience." Behind her, a holoscreen displayed images, the Prometheus first launch, the Defiance stand above Karen, the founding of the Confederation, the first Council treaty, faces of species that had once suffered alone, now standing together. The Confederation thrives not in spite of our differences, but because of them. One by one, representatives took the platform, the gaseous eye, the hive-minded Trell, the silicon-based Vex, all once ignored, now proud partners. At last, the Council's senior diplomat stepped forward. "We misjudged," he said quietly. "You were not unfit. You were unbound." They signed the accords, formalizing mutual recognition, trade, and shared jurisdiction in certain sectors. It wasn't full integration, but it was no longer exile. As celebrations echoed across Callisto Station, Chancellor's son looked down at Earth, still blue, still alive, but now merely the birthplace of something far greater. And then a signal came. From beyond the Sagittarius arm. Artificial. Not Council. Not Confederation. Unknown. She smiled faintly. "So," she said, "there are others." Her aide leaned in. "Shall we prepare a contact mission?" "Yes," she said. "And bring both banners. Council and Confederation. Let's meet the future together." The signal from the Sagittarius arm repeated every 39 seconds. It was clean, geometric, carried on a frequency just below standard hyperspace resonance, a narrowband beam no known species had used for millennia. Triangulation confirmed its origin point beyond the reach of both Council and Confederation navigational charts, in a region colloquially labeled the Black Fold. No colonies. No stations. No known travel. No return data. And yet, the message persisted. 6 perfect tones, followed by a coded mathematical sequence. Then silence. Again. And again. Confederation analysts worked tirelessly. AI clusters were deployed. Deep code specialists mapped the harmonic structure and identified a structure, not just a call, but a test, an invitation, sent not randomly, but in response to specific energy signatures. Ones now common among Confederation ships. The signal, it turned out, had always been there. But only now could someone finally hear it. Chancellor Sun convened a strategic council aboard Solstice Station, the mobile headquarters of the Confederation's exploratory division. Representatives of over 50 species attended, military minds, cultural scholars, xenopsychologists, even a quiet group of human veterans whose faces bore the weathering of long service. "We've confirmed the transmission is active, intelligent, and directed," said Admiral Trine, a Delari tactician. "But the region from which it originates is unstable. Spatial shear. Time dilation. Gravity spikes without mass signatures. It should not support complex matter." And yet, Sun said, something is there. There were no dissenting voices. Curiosity had become a Confederation trait, one inherited from humanity, one feared by the Council, and now deeply embedded in every founding charter. A decision was made, a diplomatic expedition. Multi-species crew. Civilian observers. Armed escort. Just in case. The flagship Horizon Dawn was selected. A marvel of cooperative design. Human stealth plating. Delari living hull layers. Ice shielding architecture. Vexian computational course. 112 crew. 16 races. 3 months of supplies. Chancellor Sun oversaw the departure in person. "You go not just as explorers," she told the assembled crew, "but as the product of what others tried to bury. If something waits beyond the fold, let it see who we've become." The ship jumped. For 32 hours, they were blind. The fold was not normal space. It twisted quantum fields into impossible shapes. The hull groaned like a living thing. Clocks desynchronized. Neural links required manual backup. But the Horizon Dawn held together. And then silence. Perfect silence. Then stars. But not stars as they knew them. Geometric constellations, perfectly spaced. Structures 100 kilometers long, hanging in void like frozen thought. Beams of light connecting spheres of obsidian, each humming at a different frequency. Artificial. Ancient. Alive. "This was built," whispered Chief Engineer Halen, a Shellari specialist in matter phase design. But not recently. The signal returned. This time, it translated. "You have changed. You are no longer bound by your violence. You build without domination. You reach without conquest. You may proceed." A corridor opened, not physical, but a bubble of manipulated gravity. The Horizon Dawn was drawn in. Inside, a planet. A world untouched by decay. No cities. No ruins. Just mountains of silver, oceans of slow light, valleys of blooming bioluminescent growth. The sensors recorded impossible metrics. Gravity lighter than it should be. Radiation inverted. Time dilated just slightly, enough to stretch perception. And then contact. Not a ship. A being. Massive. Shaped like nothing they'd seen. No symmetry. Constantly shifting. It moved like fluid but shimmered like crystal. And it spoke, not in sound, but in thought. "You carry the legacy of a fractured species," it said, addressing the humans first. "And yet you healed. You were denied, and you grew stronger. You reached into shadow and built stars. You have done what few ever achieve." Chancellor Sun stepped forward. "Who are you?" "We are the architects," it said. "We seeded stars. We built thresholds. We watched. And waited. For what? For the spark that changes course. It explained. The council was not the first union. Nor would it be the last. But most fractured. Most stagnated. Few adapted. Only those willing to rebuild themselves, not through dominance, but through resilience, were invited further. You were cast out, the architect said. And in exile, you became worthy. The being gifted them something, not a weapon, not a tool. A map. Not of space. Of possibility. Coordinates to thousands of hidden systems. Shortcuts through the fold. Libraries embedded in gravitational patterns. Seeds for technologies undreamed of. But you must share them, the being warned. Use them alone, and you fall as others have. Share them, and the next layer opens. The Horizon Dawn returned to Confederation space a month later. With it, the future. Back on Earth, now one of many capitals of the Confederation, the Parliament watched the data unfold. The architects had offered not power, but responsibility. We are no longer rising, said Chancellor Sunday, we are choosing what to become. Within 3 years, over 40 species had begun using the architect's knowledge. Disease was cured. Travel times halved. Energy production revolutionized. And the Council? It asked to join the initiative. The Confederation didn't deny them. It welcomed them. Because that was what humanity had learned in exile. The path forward wasn't vengeance. It was evolution. 10 years after the Horizon Dawn returned from the Black Fold, the galaxy was no longer recognizable. Hyperlanes, once rare and fiercely guarded by the Council, had become vast, living arteries of commerce, science, and culture. The Confederation, now encompassing over 100 species and stretching across 3 spiral arms, had integrated the architect's map not as a conquest blueprint, but as a shared trust. In its heart, Earth remained humble and steady, no longer a center of power, but a symbol, a reminder that growth does not require domination. A monument was constructed in neutral orbit between Earth and Mars, a ring of 20 kilometers in diameter, composed of alloys gifted by the eye and fused by Delari bioarchitecture. In its center floated an ever-shifting crystalline flame, a singularity engineered not to destroy, but to illuminate. It was called the Beacon of Resilience. Engraved around the ring were hundreds of phrases, translated into every known language. But at its core, 5 words pulsed eternally. Exile is not the end. The Council, once the arbiters of civilization, had been transformed. Their internal structure had collapsed under the weight of their own stagnation, and after a generation of diplomatic realignment, they dissolved. In their place, many of their member species petitioned to join the Confederation not as rulers, but equals. For many, it was a painful transition. But no one was humiliated. Humanity would not repeat the mistakes done to them. Those who once denied them were now welcome at their table, just not at the head. In the years that followed, new architect gateways were discovered. These veins of time, as they came to be known, allowed ships to traverse not just space, but dimensions of causality, enabling civilizations to test ideas without risking collapse. Alternate outcomes were explored. Wars averted. Ethics refined. This was the true gift of the architects, not weapons, but wisdom. And yet, with every step forward, humanity carried with it the memory of that council chamber. The condescension. The rejection. The sentence of 50,000 years. Now, only 120 had passed, and the stars spoke their name with respect. In a quiet corner of the Callisto Memorial Museum, in a preserved chamber that mimicked Earth's early underground labs, stood a single suit of aged armor. Not ceremonial. Functional. Scratched. Scorched. The initials KK faintly visible on the shoulder. Beside it, a holoprojector looped a short speech. Admiral Kim's voice. If they cage you, don't break the bars. Build around them. Make their prison irrelevant. And when they turn to find you gone, remind them that survival isn't a threat. It's a promise. Her legacy lived on not through fleets, but through philosophy. The Confederation had no emperor, no high leader, no throne. It had only guides, coordinators, elected visionaries, and a code derived from the struggle of one discarded species that refused to be forgotten. Among the many worlds of the Confederation, Earth was not feared. It was trusted, for it had walked through fire, not to burn others, but to become something new. On a far frontier world, one never mapped by the Council, newly colonized by a mixed settler cohort, a Karen child asked his teacher, "Who saved us from the skyburners?" The teacher, an elderly Delari, knelt beside him and smiled. Humans. Were they gods? No, she said. Just survivors who learned to protect instead of conquer. The child looked up at the stars. Will they protect us again? The teacher's smile deepened. They won't need to. And she pointed at the boy's own chest. Because they taught us how to protect each other. As the twin suns rose over the crystalline ridges, the boy turned his gaze outward, not to Earth, but beyond, where new signals waited, where more exiles, somewhere, still dreamed of return. And the galaxy was ready to meet them. Together.